Yeah, it's not something that I feel like is meant to just be shared with just everybody. You know what I mean? Like, it was something that was sacred, and now it's just kind of like this thing that everybody wants to do and get into. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Which I'm halfway happy about, because I we all have it in us. We all
Mm-hmm.
have spiritual gifts within us. It's
Yeah.
just some are meant to explore them and use them and help others, and some aren't.
Wisely.
Um, right. Yeah. But I just worry that it's turned into this trendy thing to do, other than the
Yeah.
responsibility that you have behind it. And with her, I think she's super into it, and she's very good. She's very intuitive. And she wants to learn from me, and that's great. I'm
Mm-hmm.
super open to anybody that wants to learn from me, because at the time when I first started, I needed that too.
Yeah.
But I want it. My biggest thing is I want people to know that, one, this is just me, my opinion. I don't want them getting stuck solely on the traditional meetings,
Mm-hmm.
because it is an intuitive thing. Um, and I want them to take it serious and have good intention behind it. And that's it. That's really my goal for people that are getting into this. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that? You're probably the same.
Um, like I said, I feel like people should be called to it, and really discern if it's the path for you, and if it is genuinely something that you're called to do, not to get stuck in the traditional aspect, because it's your own thing. You don't have to do it how everyone else does it, because what you're called to might be something someone has never had before that they actually need, or people are looking for. So to be like, oh, I'm gonna be like so and so, or I'm gonna read like this, or I can, that limits your giftings and your abilities and things like that. So
Right. And I don't know if this is true for you. It probably is, but the second guessing yourself is a thing, and it is normal.
it is.
And it's just something over time. And the longer you do it, I've noticed I second guess a lot less. I mean, I still
Hmm.
do, but that just comes, I think, with the practice, you know.
Yeah. Get feedback or journal your own readings that you do for yourself, and then you can go back and see if you were accurate, or if you picked up, the right thing.
Right.
Um, what's I gonna say? Oh, but as far as like people getting into tarot, one other thing: do not make it your idol. Your only
Say
source of
that again.
guidance. Yes, do not make it your idol.
Because it's very easy to.
Yep.
Very easy to. I mean, that's even with astrology too. I mean, I know some people get so stuck on, the placements, and like, oh, I'm not going to date a Scorpio because of this. And,
Right.
like, it gets crazy. It gets a little crazy. And that's my fear, that's why it's coming so trendy. And because, yes,
Fanatical.
a
Yeah.
lot of it is true, and it is confirmation, and I get all that, but what I hear all the time, and I believe, is not, you're not just your sun sign.
Right.
You're a whole being.
Yep.
And while your chart can help you understand yourself better, it's not something to live by every day. I don't think, anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
No. Because you're shutting down your own spiritual connectedness with your own, source, whether you call it God or your higher self, whatever.
mhm.
When you place these things in that position of, it's kind of like you're making it your God. And I
Yeah.
think that's where people get the Bible kind of twisted, is because, God warns people of, worshiping the stars. Like, there's nothing wrong with utilizing the stars, right? But when you
Mhm.
start idolizing them and looking to them as your source, that's where the problem is, right there.
Yeah. I
Because
mean,
you
even
cut
in
the
just that
source out of the
word.
equation. Hmm.
Yeah, that word worship is just,
Hmm.
it's extreme to me. And growing up hearing it, and going to church and hearing it, and
Hmm.
it put me off,
Yeah.
um, a lot of times, because it did feel very like, if you don't live your life this way, you're gonna go to hell, and it's gonna be the scary thing. And it was like, really pushed me away from it for most of my life,
Mm.
because of the
Question.
negativity. Yeah, go ahead.
So I know you're asking, you're interviewing me. I just have a quick question for you, like your opinion on this.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
feel that for those that have grew up in the church, whether it was Christianity or Catholic um, backgrounds, or are familiar with, maybe people in their family who are Christians or Catholic, that
Mhm.
when you get into the tarot community, spiritual community, when people use the word God, it's very triggering to people. Like it kind of triggers that, I wouldn't say a hatred, but kind of, it's how to explain it. Kind
Are
of
you
like
asking if it triggers me or if I see
this,
the
like
collective
as a
being
full,
triggered?
as a collective, yeah.
I do. I actually just had an episode on here. What are my beliefs? Do I believe in God? And I kind of explain my story of how I, you know, grew up and stuff, and my family's very Christian.
Mhm.
And everything that I would get from it seemed very negative. It seemed very scary. It seemed very
Mhm.
like a parent, a very strict parent telling me what to do. That's how they
Yeah.
perceived God to me. That's how they
Mhm.
explained. That's how I've seen it anyway.
Right.
And then when I would ask questions, because I was very inquisitive, still am, I always got a very vague answer.
Mhm.
And the main one was, how do you know God is real? The God that they talk about a lot. And
Right.
all I would get was, well, he's in the air, in the trees. And it just, as a young girl, I was like, that's it. And it just seemed like they were trying to get me to stop asking,
Right.
and I didn't like that. And I went away from it for a very long time. I was very anti, not like I was an atheist or anything. I just didn't subscribe to anything. I was just
Yeah.
me. And when the esoteric stuff started coming more and more into my life, it was always positive. Not always positive, but it was more positive than it was negative. I'll put it that way. And then when I started helping people I was reading for and giving them guidance, I was like, wow, this is powerful.
Yeah.
And then I learned later on that it's very similar. Like to me, the Bible is a book of prophecy. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of it anyway.
Yeah.
And up until just recently, my friend who's Christian and very religious, she told me that they talk about astrology in the Bible. I didn't even
They
know that.
do. I'll recommend this book to you. That
Okay.
this guy, he goes into it perfectly, and numerology as well, because
Yes.
we don't worship angel numbers and look to angel numbers. I feel like that's up to interpretation as well. But numbers are, they have a whole chapter in the Bible called Numbers, the book of Numbers. So like,
Oh, wow.
but
I mean, I
yeah,
always said my family don't want me to read it because if I do, I'm gonna
I got some questions. Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, wait a minute. And it's not that I don't want to read it. Honestly, I've tried many times throughout my life, and one, I can't understand half of it, and two, a lot of it is scary to me. It seems like a lot of scary stories. But
Mm,
then there are a lot of positive things in it too that I've gotten as well. I've just, like I said, it's just been very recently that I've been more open to that side of it,
mm-hmm.
um, and wanting to be more in touch with God or source, like you said, whatever you call it. But to answer your
Yeah.
question, I know that was a very long-winded question,
Uh,
or answer. Yes, I found it being very triggering for people. Just the word itself, God.
yeah. And I feel like that is due to man's interpretation of what God is. And like you said, like in church, it's always this doom and gloom. Like, you're going to go to hell. If you don't do this, you don't do that. And you
Right.
teach us we're sinners by nature. So it's like, okay. And that's why I always tell people, like, when I speak of God, I'm not speaking of a religious being. I'm speaking of source. And that is up to your own relationship with God. Like, you form your relationship with God personally with yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
As far as the Bible goes, I enjoy it because of the parables, and I feel like I can find messages in it. It's strange how I don't know. It's just weird. And I don't know how my people on my YouTube channel like perceive my channel because it's weird. I don't know. Like, I can use the Bible and the tarot, and some people might think that's blasphemous, but if you look at the tarot, there's many, you can find different references to the Bible just within the tarot alone. Like we spoke of earlier, how
Mhm.
you can find the 22 alphabet, Hebrew alphabet in each major arcana card. But there's like different references to biblical figures, biblical stories. So it's just like, Make it make sense. Like I don't
Right.
know.
Right. Exactly. Make it make sense. I mean, I'm seeing that a lot now on TikTok. I'm seeing religious people have a spiritual practice on top of
Hmm.
it, and
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I can speak for one of your viewers. I'm a fan of it because I know without a doubt you are being you and
Yeah.
you're coming from a loving, caring place. So you could talk about anything, and I will trust that you are still coming from that same loving, caring place. You know, just like you said, and I've just said, the intention behind anything.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that we're merging the two. I'm loving that I'm seeing that, which is probably why I'm going more towards it too, and wanting
Yeah.
more answers. And I have a friend, like I said, who's Christian, and she doesn't read tarot. You know, she's not into that really. I mean, she's not opposed to it. Obviously, having me as a friend, she can't be. But she's answered more of my questions than, I'm sorry, but any of my family has throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I would love to pick your brain about it too. I mean, it's you've threw some knowledge on me about the Hebrew and the number. I didn't even know any of that.
Yeah. I would love to go into that. Like, and I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. Like with church, like I said, like as a little girl, I didn't feel like I got a lot of answers. My experience, like I, my relationship and my intimacy with God was not in the church.
Yeah, mine wasn't either.
So
Interesting. And if me and you, who people who didn't even know each other, grew up in different places, we're feeling the same way, we're not the only ones, you know,
right.
and that's important.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is amazing. I love when I find like-minded people. It's like a, you know, you can breathe, you know,
Yeah.
like, because a lot of times, I mean, we so much of the human experience, we don't do things based on others' judgment. And
Hmm.
I mean, look at Jesus, how much they judge Jesus, you
Right.
know, and my heart goes out to that man. Like, I have such a respect for him and what he was trying to do. And I feel like I'm trying to do the same thing,
A
you
lot
know?
of us, I feel like, the Christ consciousness, that's what they call it. And what's so funny is that a lot of people are leaving the church. I don't know if you realize it, but there are some people that are leaving the so-called spiritual community. I hate the word new age because a lot of this stuff is not new. So I don't know why they
Right.
call it that. But I do see people leaving the quote unquote new age and going back to Christianity. And I feel like a part of it may have been, people doing it for a time. Like they might have been called to go to that realm to,
Right.
learn certain things to teach and help other people. And some people may have gotten into it, out of kind of immaturity, a spiritual immaturity, not knowing what they were
Hmm.
getting themselves into, if that makes sense.
Right.
But people leaving the church, it kind of goes to the whole Christ thing because Christ was not in a church. He was, he was doing his work all over the world. Wherever he was divinely led to go, that's where he went. And the
Right.
Pharisees were judging him because they're like, he's not doing what we do in the traditions. And he called them out. He's like, even though y'all following the traditions, you're still sinning. You're still doing this. You guys are hypocrites. You're fornicators. You're all of this stuff, and
Yeah.
you're calling me this. And they even, accuse him of doing witchcraft and all of that because he
Right.
wasn't doing things in that way that they were doing it. So it's
Right.
kind of modern day happening now. If
Hmm.
yeah.
I really don't, and I hate to even mention her, but you did earlier. I don't like the way Doreen Virtue kind of left. Um,
Mm,
it was did put a really bad taste in my mouth.
yeah.
But you know, she's on her own journey and she's got her own stuff going on. But you know, there's, I don't know.
Yeah. I can kind of understand where she's coming from her perspective. I'm just assuming that, maybe it was time for her to let that part of her journey go.